All right, so a lot of you sent me this story, and apparently Maine, it's just as cooked as Massachusetts, overcooked for that matter. And remember, this is another Democratic stronghold, which looks eerily similar to what we have going on in the uncommonwealth. So, could you believe that? Absolutely. And by the way, the Maine Wire originally broke this story, but I'm thinking to myself, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking to myself, who in God's name is going to cover this story in the legacy media? I don't live up there, but I'm willing to bet that nobody is. So that's what we're going to do today. Now, here's the story. We'll start it like this. There was a order delivered containing, a bag of rice, some paper plates, a toy lightsaber for your kid from Amazon, but also within that same box, there was 250 official Maine election ballots. That's right, not sample ballots, not junk mail from your state rep. They, to me, look to be authentic, shrink-wrapped, tamper-evident bundles of ballots for the upcoming referendum election. I'll actually edit this video a little bit for you. I normally don't edit, but I'll put a picture of what they look like on the screen. Now, think about this, guys. You wanted a Star Wars toy, a Star Wars lightsaber for your kid, and you got How to Rig an Election, the Maine edition. That's what showed up. That's not some kind of delivery mix-up here, guys. That's democracy falling right off the back of a truck. Now, if you believe the spin doctors out there, right? They're spin doctors. This was just a clerical error. There's nothing to see here. There's nothing to worry about. Sure. We believe that. And I guess that Hunter Biden just misplaced his laptop in some laundromat or something like that. It's funny how these things work out. And it's also funny how people try to dismiss them. And it happens all the damn time. Now, remember, to the best of my knowledge, I believe ballots are supposed to travel one way and one way only. And that's from a state-approved printer directly to I think it's the municipal clerk's office. And then what they probably end up doing is locking them up in a safe or something like that. Unless you live up in here, up in New England, okay? Clearly, they're not in some kind of safe. There's supposed to be an entire chain of custody with tamper evidence seals and signature receipts, because that's what make people attempt to trust the process. I know it's hard to attempt, but at least they're trying. Yet here we are, 5 weeks before Election Day, with ballots tucked between, some goods, like Amazon is running a Prime Day deal on democracy. It's absurd, okay? It's absolutely absurd. And it's really fascinating how these things happen, because it's never just about the screw up. It's about what's on those ballots. These weren't some meaningless ballots for some water district board or something like that. They included question 1, which is whether Maine should finally adopt voter ID laws, which would then make them join, I think there's like 34 or 35 other states out there that has this. And by the way, pretty much every country in Europe has this as well, although they do have quite a bit of problems over there. And you know what? The Maine Democratic chairman, okay, he has already admitted that if voter ID passes, they could lose around, I think the number was around 1,300 or 13,000 votes, okay? 13,000 votes will just vanish on a thin air like a magician's rabbit, okay? That's not me saying it. That's them admitting to it. So forgive people if they are a little suspicious when a box of ballots goes rogue at exactly the same moment voter ID is on the line. It seems very convenient to me, guys, okay? Very convenient. And then there's the box itself. The woman who received this said it looked like it had been retaped. It had to be tampered with to some extent. Now, to me, that means somebody opened up the box, they inserted the ballots, and then they obviously sealed them back up. And I'll be honest here, guys, that's like no accident. That's not like an oopsie or something. That's the definition of tampering. That's what it is. So the real question is not how did the ballots wind up in the box of rice. The real question here is how many other boxes of rice are out there hiding ballots, and how many of those ballots will end up in a drop box on election day. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. It's insane. Because look at it this way. this is the way I like to look at it. Once these things are out of the chain of custody, the entire system is compromised. Yet nobody wants to admit that. And even the Secretary of the state of Maine, I think her name is Shana or Sheena or Shania. I don't know what her first name is. All I know is her last name is Bellows. I don't know how to pronounce her first name, okay? But she is the one that is basically running this circus. And remember, you guys may or may not know this, but like, since a lot of us are here from Massachusetts behind enemy lines, but this is the same person who tried to remove Donald Trump from the 2024 ballot and then got absolutely hammered for trying to do it. And then, of course, what she did, she goes to all of the, liberal legacy media outlets, and she goes on CNN, MSNBC, NPR, you name it, all the usual suspects, okay? And let's just say this is not a neutral referee here, okay? I hate to say it, but it looks like she's basically just a partisan activist with a government title. And now, under her watch, ballots are showing up in Amazon boxes like a knockoff Labubu, okay? That's what this is. And anyone with any sense of logic would think to themselves, that the person shouldn't be the referee of something like this. And wouldn't you think that they should try to look impartial? Because she's not even really pretending to try to be impartial. She's already campaigning for governor in 2026 while overseeing elections she herself might be on the ballot for. See what I'm saying here? That would be like Tom Brady being both the quarterback and the referee of the game. That's what this is. It's ridiculous. Now, here's where the story, I would say, gets even more interesting. Because the Justice Department, they're already suing Maine because Bellows refuses to hand over their voter registration records. This sounds oddly familiar, doesn't it? Okay, it sounds oddly familiar. And by the way, that is required by federal law, okay? And there's, as far as I know, they're still not doing it. And I was also reading, prior to filming this on a podcast, she even admitted something like, something along the lines of that, maybe some non-citizens are on the voter rolls, right? Like, she just went out and admitted this, okay? And then her response to the Justice Department was some kind of joke about telling Trump or telling the DOJ to jump in the Gulf of Maine, which if I were to do that, or if you were to do something like that, it would be a legit witch hunt, okay? We would get absolutely crushed. But these type of people, what happens here, there's no accountability. She gets to just shrug this off because apparently the rule of law is optional when you've got the right politics. And you and I know both how this works. Now, as for those ballots, apparently they were printed by, I think the company's name was Election Systems and Software. I think that was it. And this is from what I was reading, a giant vendor with, of course, a cozy no big contract. Something else that we know quite a bit about here in Massachusetts as well. So not only do we have a partisan Secretary of State, we've got a sweetheart deal with a private company that somehow led hundreds of ballots that we know of so far that ended up falling into the consumer shipping stream. That's what happened. It's the perfect storm of incompetence, it's the perfect storm of corruption, and it's the perfect storm of arrogance. And it's all playing out in a state that could potentially decide the balance of the U.S. Senate in 2026. How frickin' convenient. Now let's do some dot connecting here. You've got a Secretary of State who is overtly partisan, who refuses to cooperate with the DOJ, who admits there may be non-citizens on the voter rolls, and who hands out no big contracts to companies that can't keep ballots secure. And now 250 of those ballots just happen to show up in a random woman's Amazon package 5 weeks before a referendum. That could permanently alter the state's rules of the voting inside of the state itself. But we're just supposed to sit here, or the people of Maine are supposed to just sit there and believe it's just some wacky mix-up? Come on, get real. Like, this is, they try to, this is what happens. These people try to downplay these things, even though that these are major catastrophes. That's what they try to do. They try to take the spotlight off these things, but we're not going to let them do that, are we? And really, it's insulting. And not only is it insulting, it's the definition of gaslighting. And at some point, this level of incompetence starts to look a whole lot like intent, at least to me. And before someone chimes in the comments section and says that you can't use blank ballots to rig an election, let me stop you right there. Let me stop you right there. Because the point of this video isn't whether these particular ballots could be used to cast fraudulent votes. The point of the video is that this is a problem, okay? It's a problem of the process, a process that depends on trust. And that trust will evaporate the moment ballots start floating around like coupons in the Sunday paper. You see what I'm saying here, guys? It's the bigger picture. We talk about that a lot. It's the bigger picture, because if the voters don't believe that the game is fair, guess what happens? They will stop playing that game. And when people stop playing the game, democracy collapses, and that is how you get chaos. And that's more than likely what is happening in Maine. This is why, look at it this way. This is why Republicans are demanding that the DOJ step in. And frankly, they're right. Because when the people running the game can't even keep track of the pieces, it's time for the adults to take over. That's what happens. And if Bellows is too busy campaigning or cutting deals with activists to protect the ballot box, then she shouldn't be anywhere near the ballot box. Period. End of story. And I'll end this story like this. Maybe, look at it this way, maybe this was just a freak accident. Maybe this was just a random occurrence. Maybe it was nothing at all. Or maybe, just maybe, it was sabotage. But either way, I would say all maybes lead down the same path. And that is, this is proof that the people in charge of the elections in Maine might not be too fit for the job. At least to me. I don't know what you think. You could let me know in the comments. Because if 250 ballots can hide in a box of rice, what's stopping 250,000 from disappearing into the shadows? Really, I mean, it's absolutely absurd. And for the people in power out there not to take this matter seriously just shows you, I talk about this a lot too, it shows you how insulated they've become from the consequences of their own failures. And the reason that they behave this way, the reason that these things happen is because there's absolutely no accountability. There's zero accountability. So these people could go out there, say what they want, do what they want, and then when things start to happen, they could just shrug it off. And I'll tell you this much, I don't know much about Maine. We go up to Old Orchard Beach with the kids sometimes. But if Maine is anything like Massachusetts, the majority of people that are, in power or part of the legislature and stuff like that, even a lot of the people that are the voters here, they're in a position where they've kind of become desensitized from these things, like even this item from happening, okay? They've become desensitized from it because what happens is there's this level of like pattern recognition where